All right, welcome to another episode of Verified. I'm Chad, better known as Riz, and today I have Liam with me. And Liam actually built out the VeriDAO website with the help of Tom. And he actually also built out this visual of the Ethereum transactions that I went through in my last video, the commingling video. So welcome, Liam. I'm really excited to check out what you've built here. Um,
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, let me turn on the screen share here. Connected. You can see that now, yes?
yes, perfect.
Okay. So yeah, I wanted to start at the website first because that's where most people know where to go. So veridao.io. And if you don't know the subdomain, which we have set up for a separate site, which is proof.veridao.io, my intention here, I haven't done it yet, but is to add a link in this hamburger icon in the top right corner. So that's just so you know where it will be. By the time you see this video, it should be there. But that link will navigate you to the same place where I'm about to go. So proof.veridao.io, and that'll take you to this page here. Okay, so the first thing I want to mention too is that this is a work in progress, and before we even get into the details, we could use your help, and that's to everybody in the community. From what you see here, if you start going on the blockchain, digging around, there's thousands, tens of thousands of transactions just beyond the scope of what a couple of people can do. And it's rather impressive what Riz has already pulled together, by the way, Riz. And it's rather impressive that just the presentation you had already done in the previous video. So, but we've been working together, and I've been trying to do my best to put it in a visual so that we can more easily comprehend what's going on. But as I'll just read this disclaimer here, it says this draft disclaimer. Okay. So this visualization is a working draft prepared to illustrate observed transaction pathways and custody boundaries in a large, high volume data set. Due to scale and practical constraints, it does not include every related transaction, counterparty, or intermediate hop, and certain groupings and annotations may be incomplete or subject to revision as additional records are reconciled. The chart is provided for orientation and discussion purposes only and should not be treated as a complete accounting or a definitive finding of fact. Independent blockchain verification and cooperation with off-chain records, an example, exchange statements, custody logs, and internal ledgers, are necessary, and consultation with qualified third-party forensics professionals is recommended before drawing conclusions or making formal assertions. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done here, and if you happen to navigate through this as I show you how, feel free to notice anything and bring it to our attention. And of course, we can make those corrections and make sure we represent the facts as best we can. So, getting into the document itself, at the top of the document here, we have a total count showing all the potential inferred violations. I emphasize that we're not alleging anything. We're just trying to observe the facts and determine whether or not it fits the criteria according to the definitions as we best understand. So you'll see every time there might be a contract, which would be a act of commingling, and it would be also an act of deprivation, as we can perceive it. So every time we hit or they hit a contract when they moved money from the original fund, that'll be counted here. It shows you how many addresses were affected and how many actual transactions were affected. Same applies for every time it hits an exchange, a casino, and so on. Every time the inferred violation could be counted, if you will. All right, so
Understood.
call it a scorecard, right, at the top. And then here you got the timeline now. If you look at the timeline, you got just these dots, but you can hover on these dots to kind of give you a cleaner visual, and then you could read the details of what happened in the courtroom, what happened in terms of the SEC claims down here, and then you got the actual facts that actually happened on the blockchain. So there's more detail that needs to be added, but we're working on it. If you wanted to see it more in a complete format, you can hit expand, and you can see the titles here. and get a little bit more detail of what you're looking at without having to do all these little pop-ups. And you can hold the shift key to scroll with your mouse, and that'll take you across left and right to be able to see all the events. Again, I'll collapse that, but I should, before I finish that, just show you here New York time and UTC time. That's just a little add-on there because, well, a lot of these events happened in New York, but the blockchain records in UTC. This allows you to synchronize the time, if you will, whichever way you want to think about it. All right, so we'll collapse that now. And coming into the actual chart itself, the chart has various buttons to help you follow some of the instructions, if you will. So as you pop through, first of all, let's start with the legend. Then I break down. I mean, everyone knows what a legend is, so I don't need to break the details. I'll just skip on that. But if you come into the contract, for example, a contract interactions, there's 32 inferred violations. But here you have an actual definition that breaks down what we mean by it in terms of the contract violation. So you can do the same thing with each of these. You'll get a definition as you go through, and it breaks down exactly what's going on. So as to how we thought about it when we approached this based on our research. So last detail here, you can add the back loops, and you'll see these blue lines appear. And what that does for us is it shows how many transactions we're coming out of. Now, if you have back loops turned off, they'll still show when you hover, and you can see the direction, the arrows pointing the direction of the flow of the transaction. But this allows you to see how the money was rolling back into different accounts where it appears to us that they're washing the money. They're trying to make it hard to follow. So you can turn on the back loops and see this all together in one go. And as I scroll through, you can see all kinds of blue lines that are passing through. But to make it a little less cloudy, you can just turn that off again and allow that to pop up as you navigate. Okay, so as you navigate, you can also shrink this legend slash definition tool so it's not covering your chart while you're working. As you see when you scroll around, sometimes it goes over your work.
So
Absolutely.
just so that we understand the flow here,
Yeah, yeah.
left in the green, these are all Reggie's addresses. Am I right?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. So on the inbound, here's the actual controlled address. So these are the addresses that were recorded in document 55. We can validate where Reggie Middleton's transactions from Veritaseum funds into this fair fund that was established by the court order. I believe it was Holland and Knight that established the services. And this here hold is, per the very fair fund, is where all the of Ethereum should have been held in escrow until further notice. So the understanding that we had was that this should have been frozen funds for the duration of about a year before the SEC finally asked permission to move and liquidate the funds. But the reality has it that these transactions that came in, you can see when you hover, the date and the time shows the first transaction that came in was at let's see, it's 13:13 in UTC time. And then when you come on the other side, some of those funds are already being moved. I think the first transaction is down here, and you're looking at one of them is 13. I think it's like 10 minutes later, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it was actually 6 minutes. I think all those 5K batches were the first ones sent out, and those were all in a span of 10 minutes.
Right. So that literally, as money comes in, and now I'm reorganizing this. I'm working on a new layout here, just to show this in sequential order. I felt it was probably cleaner to understand that the top transaction was the first as you work your way down, and you'll notice that it happens in batches. And if I remember correctly, I believe this is the first batch right down here. So that
Yeah,
might even be
looks
the
like
first
it.
trend. Yeah, there it is, 1336. So that shows us the first transaction or the first set of batch of transactions that are coming out. That's just 10 minutes later. And once they come into this set of wallets, this whole line here of the outbound, this entire set of wallets, the majority, if not almost all of them, are what they call mule wallets, where the money gets thrown in a temporary wallet and then almost immediately transferred out. And you can see the length of time it actually sat on the wallet in such case that it meets the criteria of a mule wallet. So in this case, it was only here for 28 seconds, 1 minute, so on and so on. So the money actually stayed here, based on this principle here that I just went on. We said, 10 minutes later from this transaction. So the first transaction coming in has already moved 10 minutes later out of this wallet. So it only stayed in the controlled wallet for 10 or less, sometimes more, but 10 to 20 minutes or so, 10 to 21 minutes. Money has not stayed in that Fairy Fair Fund for any longer than that. And so it's hard for me to perceive them as honoring a frozen escrow account when the money's already been moved out within 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it. So I'll leave it at that, right? You make your own assessment. But when it comes down to it, every one of these wallets coming to the outbound. And what we did is we started, well, Riz, he's playing the memory game, turning one card after another, matching everything up. And I took his data and put it in this chart format so that we can visualize it better. And that's what we're doing here, trying to trace this thing out to figure out where all the money's been going. And you can see all these loopbacks, you know, popping or back loops, however you want to say that, uh, just looping back into all these wallets. And look at this wallet; it's very active, reconnecting to all these other wallets. As these wallets also have another loop from here into here. If I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be there, but I can't see it now, so I'll have to check that. But anyway, and then you got this wallet that's interacting with, well, Bit Casino. I don't know why. I guess ask yourself that question. What are they up to? I don't know. But when you work your way through each line, you can see basically what's going on. You can click on any one of these. You can see the transactions on the inbound and the outbound, both separated for you. And you can download a CSV file of those transactions. And if you want to get more detail, you can just click on that node or shall I say, click on that address, and it'll take you to Etherscan exactly where the data is being extracted from. So see for yourself, skim through it, try to see if you can understand what's going on, and if you catch another nugget, let us know, right? So coming back over here,
I'll
the
just add, Liam, this is phenomenal to be actually be able to visualize it on the chart that you built there is
okay,
is beyond helpful. Like this is really amazing work.
yeah, I just know when you're sending it to me, I'm going, I can't make sense of this. So, which is why I really look at, how did you do the memory game so well? But I'm looking at, because it's like it was just the brain melts while you're looking at the data
It
and
is
data
true,
for,
but I do commend you for being able to visualize it because or create something to visualize it because I couldn't wrap my head around that part, that's for sure.
well, just doing what we can to try to make it easier. So, but yeah, so and hopefully that'll help anyone else help us. And that's kind of the goal here, isn't it?
Exactly.
So, yeah, back to any one of these nodes, you can see all the activity in the Very Fair Fund. Those are the transactions coming in, all the transactions going out. You can see all the times and follow them. And I got more features coming. You can sort them, and then what's up and coming, you'll be able to sort these. But we're working on that. I'm just work in progress. So
So just to be clear, catch everybody up here. What you've actually done is you've tied these directly, like I know you use CSV files, but they're actually linked. Like you have every node or cell here linked directly to Etherscan. So
correct.
whether it's through API or just a URL, you actually have the data linkable. Every one of these nodes will take you to that
Absolutely.
Etherscan address.
Yeah, let's break that detail down. Let's just use the control wallet. You have the addresses. You can link at any one of these addresses. Every one of these are links, and there you have it. You're looking now at that address that for which that transaction took place. You also have the transaction, and you can look at the transaction itself and the details of the transaction. So you've got pretty much everything linked directly to Etherscan. If you're hovering on an edge, you can see the details of the transaction of that edge. We're referring to these wires as edges. But we pop that open. Same thing. You got your from, you got your to. Kind of repeats itself here. I'll clean that up. But then you got the transaction link right here. All transaction links are prefixed with three dots, and all wallet links, or not wallet address links, are as a suffix. That's how you navigate pretty much. Again, you can click on an edge, and you can click on any one of these guys. So just to finish up the last of this, as you scroll down further, and you can see we have 5 hops all the way out so far, and uh, all these solid ones are exchange endpoints or contracts. Like the purple's a contract that are rolled into, or an aggregator. That's what that one actually is. And then you have an actual exchange here, Fork Delta, where the money was moved to. So just to kind of point that out, that these solid nodes are endpoints. That I'm not sure we'll keep the symbol in my new layout, but we do have the symbol on this design and this layout to show you that that's an endpoint as well. By endpoint, we just determined that there's too many transactions for us to even discover what's going on after that. Like digging into that particular wallet, this one has, well, 14 transactions, but when you actually look at where it went to, now I'm must have picked the wrong option here, but I think that's where it finally goes on that Coinbase wallet. And when you hit one of these exchanges, you're looking at 26,158,000. That's like just too many. We're
And
just not going to go
I
through.
believe Etherscan kind of caps you at 100,000 transactions. So anything above 100,000, you're kind of out of scope.
Right. And when you're trying to pull from the Etherscan API, 100 at a time is good enough. Trying to push too much, you're going to have to make multiple pulls. So it just gets a little too bloated. And then you really can't track it at this point. You're going to have to go and get a subpoena from, in this case, it's Coinbase, right? From this
Yeah.
case, from Coinbase to get all these transactions and find out where that actual money went. So it really is untraceable at that point once it hits an exchange. So yeah, and the only reason that was off by a couple wallets is because again, I come to realize that we can't fit all the data on here. So to give an example, as I was going through your records and loading them in, I believe it was one of these two that I started to load in. And before you know it, I went from 6,000 transactions in total to 30,000 transactions on record. And this thing got so huge, I just couldn't, I couldn't work with it anymore. So then I found myself trying to purge and remove the transactions. And before you know it, I'm starting to pull data out from other things as well. It's causing problems on the sheet. Then I had to rebuild those components, and it was just too much work. So I've rebuilt the entire approach of how I create these charts now. But that's still actually a work in progress. But anyway, that said, that kind of leads into the fact that even though it says 6,000 transactions, I have to confess up front and say you might search for something and not find it, and you might search for something and find too much. So there will be some incongruencies here with the transaction count. So just know that that's going to be updated and fixed, and I'll have a more accurate record in the future. But this bottom section will allow you to filter. You have a couple of quick filters here, so you can click on contracts and you can see all the transactions that are related to contracts, all the transactions that are related to exchanges, and so on. Casino, it jumped because there's only six here. And then you got deprivation related transactions and so on. And then if you want to narrow it down to a specific transaction hash or a particular wallet or a dollar amount, you can start using this filter here and take advantage of the filter to help yourself find what you're looking for if you have any particular specifics that you want to find. But the final detail then I'd say here's this download CSV. Whatever you filter to is going to narrow your download file. But if you select all and you hit download, you can take the entire CSV file, load it up in your spreadsheet, and you can start analyzing the data with whatever. If you're good with Excel, you can make formulas if you want to, and just start thinking about things in a different way that maybe we haven't thought about.
This is really great stuff, Liam.
Thank you. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, no kidding.
I was gonna say, I think we've been on this, what, 2 days before the turn of the year. That makes it 26 days of work now,
Yeah.
nonstop. Yeah, from the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment the head drops, if I can say it that way.
Yeah, no,
Um,
no kidding. It literally has been a great deal of work.
it has. And hence the reason it hasn't been done yet.
Yeah.
And hence the reason it's so darn expensive to pay for a forensics team to get it done.
Yeah, what's like 50 grand to do something like this?
That's the understanding. Yeah, for the size this is, it could be even more.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong.
I think we
But
had a
this,
quote for 30 grand, but that might take us to what, three hops.
yeah.
So.
But what's really great though is if you scroll up here, what I really want to just hit home and how great this is to visualize. Actually, scroll down just a bit more. Let's go to those
Yeah,
5K batches, right?
these here.
So in my video, I highlighted how some of these transactions left the controlled wallet in these 5K batches. So 30K was deposited by Reggie into that very fair fund. and then there was quickly split up into these 5K batches. And that's represented in this little clump here that Liam's on right now. And then you see that they all go into this one transaction here or node or address. And this is a compilation. If you don't mind actually clicking on that link.
This one here?
Yeah, the top. Yeah. We see here that basically it's all aggregated into this or collected here, and they're all ins. And then we only have this one out of 146,000 K ETH. Now, if we go back to your chart, we see just how clean it looks and visually. Um, if you just go off of that real quick, yeah, you see how all the transactions now go over into these and get split up into these 25K batches, right?
Right.
So now
Right.
visually you can actually see we've got an example here of smurfing and then commingling
Yep.
and then smurfing
Yeah.
again, right? And
That's
this
right.
is how we described how hard it is to now follow the trail of this 30,000 ETH because it got mixed in with so much other ETH that's not Reggie's. And now we can't
Exactly.
actually track the location or the destination of where all Reggie's ETH went because of all the mixing that ha has happened.
I have to say it's hard to believe that they did this by accident.
Yeah,
You
especially
know?
especially happening in 26 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a human can't even do the transaction in 20, or, 41 seconds in this case, and so on. I mean, I don't know anybody who could administer multiple transactions at that kind of speed.
No,
You know?
it's
So
crazy.
it's obviously scripted,
Yeah.
and which shows intent. And here, just a detail to show, notice the thickness of the line. It represents the quantity, the size of how much ETH actually was transferred. So it kind of gives you a visual to capture, these real thin lines they weren't too exciting. But this guy, obviously, there's a huge amount of transaction that went through at 146,000, if I got that right.
Yep.
Yeah, 146,000 Ethereum. And that comes at 33.9 million. And then you can see that, as you already mentioned, these 2.5K transactions, one after another, all of them being smurfed. And this whole chunk right here, 11 seconds, 30, 11 seconds, 33, 30 seconds, et cetera, right? And they all aggregate down here into Coinbase. So obviously we know what they did with that and why. Why not just move that amount of money straight to Coinbase if that's what you're going to do with it?
That's a
Why
good
would you move
question.
it through all these wallets and then take it to Coinbase? Doesn't make any sense,
No.
so
Especially
Kraken.
when you consider that you're almost adding risk. Every transaction, you're risking something going wrong, right?
Right,
Whether you're
right,
off a letter on the address or maybe
right.
somebody um, fished you and is getting in between your transaction, whatever it may be, you're adding so much risk breaking it up into these smaller transactions.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I don't know. There's no explanation for it. I don't have one, and it just doesn't make any sense why they would do that. And it goes on. I mean, you got another big chunk of transactions that all got aggregated on a different Coinbase account. 194, 196.
But what also you see is you showed it earlier too, is these 25 K batches now of ETH. Um, some of them get aggregated or collected again in other wallets, right? Like there's a 25K and a 32.5K ETH collection that spawns off of
Oh,
this, right? So it's almost like they're just doing it again.
oh, you're referring back to the aggregation down
Yeah. So
here.
like just above
This
your
guy.
Coinbase one, um, up more, a little bit more. That
Here?
one, or that one
Yeah.
right there. Yeah. Right. So that
Right, right, right. Okay.
25K is now sent to that address and now batched up and collected again, almost like they're going to redo this same kind of activity.
Right, right. And William found some details here under Three Arrows Capital.
Yes.
Was there a
Huge
connection
fund.
there where, yeah, can you articulate the details on that?
Uh, a little bit. So Three Arrows Capital is a hedge fund that went bankrupt in 2023, I believe, or 22. And what's odd about this is we see some of the funds from Reggie's or the VFF controlled address that was in Holland and Knight's care or escrow wallet um, ended up in Three Arrows Capital, right? It definitely
Right.
looks that way. And what else is
Emphasis
good
on
about this
emphasis
is
on Holland and Knight.
Yes, because Holland and
So
Knight actually represented Three Arrows Capital in their
they
bankruptcy proceedings.
they started this, as I understand,
Correct.
and now why are they on the other end of the transaction here?
That's
Five months
very,
out.
very good question. And also, there's interactions with FTX, another questionable exchange that we all know. And then, yeah, there's a few others. So
Right.
definitely questionable. And this
Yep.
definitely helps visualize it a lot better.
Yeah. So I encourage anyone to go digging around through here, and see what you can find, and know that we are aware of a few mishaps, and I'm working on fixing them. But um, that's what it's here for. We put it up for the public to see at proof.veridao.io. And one last detail we might want to cover here too is that skim wallet, just to show where that's at. What was that skim wallet again?
There it is, the gray,
Right there.
yeah.
Yep, got it. Yep, and just to point out, because you pointed this out in your video as well, how they were skimming just over one ETH repetitively, and you can see they skimmed it out of this wallet, they skimmed it out of this wallet, but they've also skimmed out of many other wallets, and you can see there's quite an array here of wallets that they've pulled from. And if you go to the actual blockchain, there they are. So you can see our data matches that we're not making anything up. It's straight from Etherscan.
Yep.
And yeah, that's just another example of I don't know. It seems like, here's a list of all the violations we can break the law on, I suppose, right? And let's see if we can hit them all. Let's know a checklist. Let's
It
knock them
does
all
seem
out,
that way. It really does seem
right?
like it almost seems like they were trying to, yeah, check off every box because they literally gave you an example of everything here. You've got
Right.
contracts, straight into exchanges. Definitely curious to get an explanation from the SEC on this. And as we know, they just replied with their final accounting and they neglected to account for any of the digital assets.
Yes, as if none of this ever happened.
Yeah.
I'm sorry though, it's still on the blockchain. You can't erase the blockchain.
Yeah.
Records are there forever, immutable. So, and it may be worth mentioning last detail here about the Kraken account. First, that was a a long dispute back and forth of whether it's a corporate or a personal account. And that's the reason it would be the last, although I have it at the top. Like I said, I'll reorder these by time. But if we were to place this correctly, it should be at the bottom.
Mhm.
But as it was the last event that happened, really, in terms of transferring money from Veritasium Incorporated to the Fair Fund. But we mapped it out here in orange to ensure that we can kind of make sense of what's happening with that same money, separate from the rest. And you can see that same 900 ETH. I think you covered this in your video. You had the 900 ETH coming in here. It just a quick hop, 47 seconds later. Then you got the 900 ETH already commingling here because you got a couple transactions that happened beforehand, and you're trying to make sense of what happened to that money going out. Well, how do you make sense of it at this point, being that
Mhm.
it's all blend together? And once you hit here, now you know that a percentage of the money, in theory, would be in any one of these three wallets. So as you run these through these wallets, they hop again, they loop back on the on here, they even loop back to here, and then they come back through here and connect to this what? Bit casino? I've already asked the question. I'll leave it to you. I don't know. What are they doing?
Well, again, this is why commingling is so dangerous, right? Because at this point, you can't prove whether or not any of the funds actually went there or not.
Right.
Now, I'm skeptical if any actually did end up there, but again, this is why it's so dangerous because you can't actually prove it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's impossible to trace at this point. Some of it. Some of
And
it,
it's
well,
and it was
a
done by
lot of it.
design, right? Like it definitely seems like were splitting up, mixing these funds on purpose.
Exactly. Exactly.
They know the
It more
rules. They created the rules.
exactly. And well, I mean, how many times are we going to say it? But yeah, I mean, how many, what do you do? Right? I mean, break every law, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
That's the answer. How do you hide the money? How do you make it go away? And as I would imagine that being that a lot of this is scripted, obviously, uh, it sure looks that way at least. They've been doing this for long enough where they've been doing what they've been doing for probably decades. And with cryptocurrency being another option, they just thought they could continue the same activity and nobody will notice.
Yeah, it does seem like you're right there.
Right.
And I'd be curious to see if any other um, crypto cases uh, has similar evidence to this. If there's any other fair funds, and let's say you know, the Kit case or Kin or whatever you want to call that company. I forget the name of it, or Library.
Yeah, right.
There's a few different examples here that we could pull from that may actually show, similar evidence to this.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. They might actually link into the same fair fund if we trace it back. We got a few points where we could actually dig from, and here's one, commingling.
You're
What's
right.
all the where are all those source funds coming from? Let's start trailing backwards and connect that. We might actually find it connects to some of these other fair funds too,
I
which
wouldn't
would
be
be
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, especially those skim wallets, right? There's hundreds,
right.
679, I believe, 600 skims of one full ETH.
And the fact is that it's so complex that writing code around it to automate the process at this stage, from as far as I've gotten so far, you do need human interaction to be able to do any of this analysis. For example, finding all of these loopbacks or back loops, it's not exactly easy and obvious to trace that out. But if you can script it, that can be done, but it's a little tricky to put together, because of all the cross-referencing that has to happen in order for it to find these back loops and maintain accuracy, right? So
Mhm.
it gets pretty complicated in terms of writing automation that is the goal. But creating that for each step along the way, you have to automate each thought. You have to think through what a contract might look like. And then you have to analyze that with code. It's a little
Yeah.
tricky, right? And so that goes down the list here. Each one of these would be a separate analysis. And these back loops as well are yet again a separate analysis. So to find all these automatically is it's quite an undertaking. For the time being, the human effort and in a large part your effort has already overturned turned over a lot of these stones and found a lot of these nuggets.
But at the same time, like I did see some of these loopbacks, but now that we actually visualize it in this chart, it's showing me so much more that I didn't see, right? Like I
Right,
caught
right,
a
right,
couple of those loopbacks, but if you keep going, you see many examples of loopbacks, right? Like
right.
we got funds going all over the place and then coming back to some of these original wallets and just doing it again.
Yeah, why would you split this fund here and break it into all these transactions just to bring it right back into the beginning of the fund again?
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It's like it just raises a lot of questions, and I'm not making any allegations,
You know,
right? But I don't know. You look at the blockchain, it doesn't lie.
definitely curious stuff. And I'll even say that I went through the Bitcoin addresses as well, and it's a little bit of a different beast because you're focusing more on the transactions than the addresses. And Bitcoin itself doesn't actually give you as much info as Etherscan does, right? So that we don't actually see these exchange endpoints or contract endpoints.
Mm,
They don't show up on Bitcoin's blockchain Explorer. I
right,
can add.
right.
I did find many examples of skimming, but that's essentially the best I could find in Bitcoin, and they trail on for a long. Like I think I went 20 hops in Bitcoin. Um, so the trail isn't as muddied as Ethereum, but Ethereum does show you more in the way of, contracts, and even the commingling and smurfing, to be honest. There's much more of that. Just the Ethereum in general is just much more damning.
Yeah, and part of that might be because Ethereum has smart contracts and it's more easily scripted.
You're right.
Um, I mean, you can still script some of the transactions, say with Bitcoin, but you're limited more from a wallet transaction or from a wallet control to the addresses of that wallet, right? Whereas here, you can actually write smart contracts that do a lot of the work.
And it does seem like they've done exactly that. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at that first hop or the outbound column, what are we looking at here? I see 37 seconds, 40 seconds, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 1 minute. Like these funds didn't last much longer than a few minutes at most.
Right.
So
right? So there's, it
that has to be a script.
has to be. Yeah. Yep. I can't type in 21 seconds.
No.
I mean, copy paste maybe, but you have to have everything lined up and ready to go. And I still don't know if you can do it in 21 seconds.
Yeah. Well, we have one there, 7 seconds. Like,
Yeah, I was just gonna
what?
say, yeah, I was gonna roll to that. And if you look at the timing, having a programming background, you could pretty much surmise that it was a looped, basically a script loop that triggers maybe every minute. And in this case, the trigger happened 28 seconds. I said that backwards, but the trigger happened 28 seconds thereafter from that trigger, if that makes sense. So if it was hitting on the minute, every minute, and this transaction came in, say, 32 seconds after that last hit, that's why it takes 28 seconds for it to transact out, because it's going through a loop and it hits every minute, right? So it all depends upon when the transaction came out of here into here, and then it causes a timing discrepancy that would be somewhere in and around about a minute. So, if it's over a minute, sometimes it may have registered on the blockchain but didn't get scanned or caught by the script. And then you'll see something like a minute and some seconds or something if there are any. But that gives it kind of a it makes a lot of sense, and I've seen this kind of behavior enough to pretty much surmise that it's a script loop that's running probably on a 1 minute cycle.
Yeah. And then we see the same examples of that. If you scroll over to hop three, is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah. Which actually, yeah, you see some of these same examples here. We got 40 seconds, 5 seconds. Like, come on.
Yeah, 1 minute, 33, 43. Looking for a short one. 16 seconds. Yeah, there you go. 5 seconds. Yep. And so you're looking at, there's a bunch of fives. Here's an 8 second, and so on. And that's a lot of, I mean, this is about 75 transactions, if my estimate is correct. It's pretty close. It's just shy of that. I think maybe near 70 transactions that came out of this one wallet. And they're all happening within the same frame of time, aren't they? Yep. So it's same day, same date. Earlier in the day, 11 o'clock UTC time in the afternoon, I should say, or just before afternoon. And then, of course, just before the turn of the day here. But they all
Well, I mean,
happened
if
on
you've got a
320.
couple that are 5 seconds each, I mean, if you think about it, that 146K landed up in that address, and then instantly, 5 seconds, those transactions are moving. So if we have multiples on 5 seconds, that means they're all happening at the exact same time, right?
Let's grab
Because,
those fives. Yeah, here.
right? So we
Right.
got 4 5 seconds in a row. That's all happening at the exact same time because that 146K ended up in that address all at once. And as
Well,
soon
it
as
says
it
right
ended
here.
up there, 25 was shaved off and sent out.
And these times are the time the transaction came in. So you're looking at 19, 19, 11 seconds. Just looking at they're exactly the same time. These 5 second markers right here were exactly 19 seconds after the minute, three times.
Yep.
So they did in fact come in at exactly the same time. So
It has
that's
to be
it.
a script.
Yeah, there you go.
Unless they had four people doing this all at once.
Literally, yeah, right. Because this is what 8 seconds earlier than these.
Yeah.
It still counts as an 8 second transaction, probably because this one moved out sooner too. So back to that script loop caught it because it happened a little sooner and moved it sooner. And then these came through just 8 seconds later.
So now we're covering the seconds. So now we know what those little callouts that you've added there. What are the other ones on the bottom? Do you want to help describe some of these? Yeah,
These
exactly. That.
badges here. Yeah,
Yeah.
these badges, it's a first attempt using I got new icons being generated for this. It's going to get much more easy to read. But these are symbols that I can use as text references, that kind of represent the concept or the idea. But just to give you a guide, let's see here. I do not have those badges marked out yet. So there's a fallback here that I have to fix. But if I look at the legend, yeah, they're not in there either. So yeah, worth covering here. These two curly brackets, for example, represents a script. So a smart contract, for example, is scripted. So it just demonstrates that the money that moved into a smart contract. The the red badge with a circle and a slash through it, that represents a deprivation for now. Like I said, we got better icons coming. And this one here is what is that again? I gotta remember now. Commingling. Make sure I got that straight. I'm just skimming my eyes through here to make sure. Yeah, that would be commingling for sure. All right, so we're using that for commingling. This is when it ties into or has some connection or affiliation with the big casino
Oh yeah, okay.
gambling. Okay, so we have this here would be an exchange. So you got the arrow going back and forth to each other, opposite directions. What else can we grab here?
You've also color coded the purple to be smart contracts endpoints and the red, the full red, to be exchange endpoints.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And you'll notice that there's a few anomalies. I believe what we did is we thought this, I don't know if we thought this to go somewhere else or had it mismarked. And that's not actually the exchange, but or maybe there's two exchanges tied
I
to each other.
think I think what happened was is we've learned now if you actually go to that address, the middle one there, yeah. I think what we've learned here is that this might have been funded by an exchange. Yeah, see, funded by Gemini at the top there.
Yeah.
We've learned that this address isn't necessarily owned by Gemini. Somebody could have withdrawn funds from Gemini, and this is why it says funded
Interesting
by, because
question.
the first transaction in this address came from Gemini.
Yeah, it becomes a little ambiguous, a little harder to try to figure out exactly what we should label as. So
Yeah.
there's some of that, we might have to fine tune the way we approach this. Hence, it doesn't have the badge on it, and we didn't quite solve these details yet. But then you come in here and just to take a look at that wallet. We have Kraken.
Yeah.
Everything's coming in from Kraken.
Yeah, that's clearly
Everything's
a
important.
Kraken address. Yeah.
And it's also got a badge of Kraken. So we're pretty sure that's Kraken. And
Oh,
then
it
2
actually
million.
says contract creator. So this is actually a Kraken contract.
Aye, so that goes right back to it's both an exchange, right? And so we got the exchange symbol, but we should put this contract symbol on there as well
Yeah,
to
good
mark
point.
that correctly. Yeah. So yeah, we're still polishing out the details, and I'm not doing it on this layout at this point. I'll be doing it on the next one, but we're piecing it together a little bit at a time. And again, it's a lot of work. So
It's a great deal of work. And Liam, you've done so amazing to put this together. Slowly chipping away at a monster task here.
as you, I'm not alone here. We've done a lot of work. So yeah, it's been a lot of work, and we're just trying to make sure we get all the facts laid out. We want the truth. That's what we're here for.
Even the layout, right? Because when we first did this, all these lines were crisscrossing each other. You were talking about how you wanted everything to align by
Yeah,
date. By doing that, you create this um, massive crisscross of information, and it's extremely hard to read. And
sure
you
enough.
reorganized everything to make it flow a lot nicer. And you know, you visually captured exactly what's happening here, in my opinion.
Right. So when it comes to the date problem, I first started just organizing that's how we ended up with this, just getting them all to flow. But when it comes to dates, I think it'll help us on just this column to set this column in order by date, because it really is the first transaction that comes out of the Very Fair Fund. And it helps us see how they batched it out, right? So if you were to see the three transactions that batched in, and then you get this chunk of transactions here that batched out, I'd rather see those on the top, right? And then you got this chunk of transactions that batched in again, and then you got a series of these transactions, whichever they are. I don't have it by memory. Those are the next set that should be batched out, right? To keep things in a sensible order and then continue the flow and keep it clean. So that's what I'm doing in the next run. But yeah, you can't follow maintaining it ordered by time in the next hop. At that point, you just got to let it go,
Yeah.
just let it flow. But it does help to see what happened because we're looking at money in, money out, and we're talking minutes, seconds, you know,
And
ridiculously short amount of time.
you're also showing how some nodes or addresses connect with some of the other nodes later on that other ones or addresses interact with, right? Like I see lines coming from all the way down to the bottom, connecting with some of these nodes. in hop two as an example, right? Yeah, I see that one line going all the way up. Yeah, like,
Oh, this guy's blue one.
yeah, so you're showing examples of how some of these addresses are collecting from different points.
Well, yeah, I'm working on adding Zoom capability to this, but I'll use the browser. I'm on a Mac, so it'd be either Command minus or Control minus to do what I'm doing here now. I went a little too far, but I'm just trying to zoom out so we can see all that activity, those blue lines coming through together.
And the blue lines are loopbacks. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah, back loops or loop backs. I keep flipping
Back.
my, hence the name itself. I keep flipping the name back and forth too. So, but yeah, that's the all these blue lines coming through here. So you can see the activity rolling back. I think we got over 20 instances of it looping back.
Well, very well done. I'm excited to see this, go live, which I guess it's live right now, but I know
It's live.
you're chipping away at it. You almost have a different updated version coming with your new badges and whatnot. This is only going to get more clean and perfected as we work on it more.
Yeah, that's the plan. And again, we're inviting anyone else to have a look, see what they notice. If you feel like you're a good detective, you got those detective skills, you want to play Sherlock Holmes, or come on, join us. You know,
Yeah.
we could use as many Sherlocks and Watsons as anyone is willing to volunteer. So there's just a lot to see here, and commenting on in the Veritasium group. I'm sure one of us will catch it, and that's at least for now. Maybe I could add a place where you could submit what you notice once we get to a point where we feel like we're kind of caught up. I'll probably
Good
add that
idea.
in, so that way anyone can submit anything that they might see that we ought to take a look at
And when
or
Lee
mistake.
mentioned the Veritaseum group, he's talking about Telegram, and that's the Telegram Veritaseum
Right.
official room. If you're looking for a link to that, you can find it on Reggie's profile in his link tree. That way, there you know you're getting the correct group link. But
Very
yeah,
good.
good job, Liam. This is fantastic stuff.
Thank you very much. And yeah, and to you as well.
Well, thank you.
I cannot stand with the credit alone, not in this. So a lot of
Well,
work from this, both
I
sides.
mean, helping visualize this, you deserve the credit because this again is phenomenal work. Yeah,
Well, I'm
great
happy to
job.
do it. I'm happy to do it for all of Veritasium because we've been fighting this long enough. It's time to see the SEC take ownership of their actions.
Yeah, what are we almost 6.5 years now?
Too long,
Yeah, it's too long.
too long for sure.
All right, well, thank you very much, Liam. And I look forward to doing this again whenever we perfect this document and maybe move on to a BTC version. And I'll just
Yeah.
add here that the very tokens that are held in that multi-sig wallet, they're still there. I don't believe Reggie has any keys to that wallet. I know there's some debate about that, but long story short, those funds are still there. So the very tokens are still locked up. I'm talking about the 98 million.
Hmm.
So really what we're talking about here is the Ethereum and the Bitcoin that was also seized or Reggie sent to this controlled address. So yeah, great job again, Liam. And yeah, look forward to doing this again.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, that 98 million funds is actually tokens that represent access to software,
That's
right?
right.
They're not actually funds. Just to
Yeah.
clarify that. Yeah.
No, that's a good point. And it's not a meme coin either. It's a utility token that was
Yes.
strictly intended to access Veritasium products and services.
Right. A lot of ambiguity around that, just to make it clear as possible.
Yeah, no, great job. All right, well, thank you,
Um,
Liam, and thank you all for your support. And like always, look forward to seeing you guys next time.
all right. Take care now.